If your answer to why should we hire you sounds generic, repetitive, or forgettable, the problem is usually not your experience. It is how you present your value. Because most candidates either summarize their resume again or they list strengths without showing how those strengths matter for this role. That is when the answer sounds safe, yet not convincing. The goal is not to say more. The goal is to make your value clear, relevant, and easy to say yes to. A better answer is much simpler. You want 5 parts: fit, strength, proof, application, and close. That is the structure. Say why you fit the role. Highlight your strongest advantage. Show proof. Connect it directly to the job. Then close clearly. If you do that well, your answer sounds focused and confident without sounding rehearsed. So, let's make this practical. The first part is fit. This is where you show that you understand the role and that your background matches it. Not your full history, just the alignment. A useful question to ask yourself here is, why am I a strong match for this role specifically? Another one is, what part of my background connects most directly to this job? That matters because interviewers are not just listening for skill, they're listening for relevance. So, in this section, your job is to anchor your answer in the role. That can sound like, this role focuses heavily on cross-functional coordination, which is something I have done consistently in my recent work. Or, this position requires strong client communication, and that has been a core part of my experience. Or, this role is centered around managing timelines and delivery, which aligns closely with my background. That is enough. You are showing alignment first. The second part is strength. This is where you highlight your strongest advantage. Not 3 strengths, not a list, just one clear point. A useful question to ask yourself here is, what is the one thing I do especially well that matters for this role? Another one is, what do I want them to remember about me? That helps because strong answers are focused, not scattered. So in this section, your job is to define your edge. That can sound like, one of my strengths is keeping projects structured and moving, even when priorities shift. Or, a key strength I bring is clear communication across different teams. Or, I am particularly strong at organizing complex work into clear next steps. Now your answer has direction. The third part is proof. This is where you support your strength with a real example. And this part matters because without proof, your answer sounds like a claim. A useful question to ask yourself here is, where have I already demonstrated a strength? Another one is, what example shows this clearly? That keeps your answer credible because interviewers trust examples more than statements. So in this section, your job is to make your strength real. That can sound like, in my last role, I managed a project where timelines were shifting and I kept the team aligned by restructuring the plan and setting clear priorities. Or, for example, I worked with multiple teams and made sure communication stayed clear, which helped avoid delays. Or, I led a project where I broke down complex requirements into clear steps, which helped the team move forward efficiently. Now your answer feels grounded. The fourth part is application. This is where you connect your strength directly to the role you're interviewing for. And this part matters because interviewers are not just asking what you have done. They're asking what you will do here. A useful question to ask yourself here is, how does this strength apply to this role? Another one is, what value will this create for this team? That keeps your answer forward-looking because strong candidates translate past experience into future value. So in this section, your job is to connect the dots. That can sound like the same approach would help me keep this team aligned as priorities shift. Or I would bring that same level of communication to make sure work moves clearly across teams. Or that experience would allow me to help structure projects effectively in this role. Now your answer feels relevant. The fifth part is close. This is where you end your answers clear and confidently. And this part matters because many candidates drift at the end. A useful question to ask yourself here is, what do I want them to take away from this answer? Another one is, can I restate my value simply? That keeps your answer strong because a clear close reinforces your message. So in this section, your job is to land the answer. That can sound like, this is the value I would bring to this role. Or, that is how I would contribute to the team. Or, that is why I would be a strong fit for this position. Now, your answer feels complete. So when you put the 5 parts together, it becomes much easier to answer this question clearly. Fit. Why you match the role. Strength. Your key advantage. Proof. Where you have shown it. Application. How it applies here. And close. Your final message. That is the structure. And it works because it keeps you away from 2 common mistakes. The first is repeating your resume. That is when the answer sounds like a summary instead of a case. The second is listing strengths without proof. That is when the answer sounds generic and easy to forget. You want the middle, clear and convincing. For example, this role focuses on managing cross-functional work, which aligns closely with my background. One of my strengths is keeping projects structured and moving even when priorities shift. In my last role, I managed a project with changing timelines and kept the team aligned by restructuring the plan and setting clear priorities. That same approach would help me support this team's delivery and coordination. That is the value I would bring to this role. That works because the answer is easy to follow. It shows fit. It highlights a strength. It provides proof. It connects to the role, and it closes clearly. Another mistake candidates make is trying to sound impressive instead of being clear. They use bigger language. They add more points. They stretch the answer. That usually weakens it. You do not need a longer answer. You need a more focused one. Now, this matters even more in final interviews because that is when this question often carries more weight. The same structure still works. You do not need a different answer. You need a clearer one that makes your value easy to understand. So, if you want a practical way to answer, why should we hire you? Ask yourself 5 questions. Why am I a strong fit for this role? What is my strongest advantage? Where have I shown this clearly? How does this apply here? How do I want to close this answer? Then, check 5 things before you finish. Did I show clear alignment with this role? Did I focus on one strong point? Did I include a real example? Did I connect it back to this job? And did I close clearly and confidently? That is the goal. Not a longer answer, a stronger one. Because in this question, you're not describing yourself. You're making a case.